Hey guys, welcome to the Sample Podcast, the number one social dynamics podcast in the world. And I have a very special guest, someone that I've rose the ranks of TikTok with. We first found each other when we were both growing at the same time. He's exploded to 500,000 followers. He's got about 10 million likes on the app. He has a unique perspective on dating, relationship, purpose, as well as masculinity and femininity. He is the author of the book Love Isn't Poetry, all written by him. With me on the show is Mr. Levi Washington. Welcome to the show, brother.
I'm good, man. Appreciate it. I'm
Uh,
honored to be here and
Thank
looking
you,
forward to
man.
some conversation, bro.
It will be good. And I forgot in that intro just then, the man that has the merch at the back, he has the poster. That is your book, my friend. I actually was like, you know what? This morning I get on, I'm like, if I got to interview him, I got to buy the book. So I bought the book. It's coming along the way. So I can't wait to do it. But yeah, man. So tell us a bit about yourself because my audience may not know you. And I want them to know you because you're someone that's definitely got me to think past where I was, my paradigms, my belief system. So I want to be able to share that with the audience. So tell us how you became this sort of TikTok, Instagram, sort of social celebrity in the space of purpose building, pursuing your passions, men's health, and all these kind of things.
Well, have you ever, I guess I'll say it this way. Have you ever scratched an itch and you just like, and it doesn't ever quite satisfy, right? Or you drink from a cup that never seems to satisfy. I think that that's kind of more or less what started the trajectory of where I am right now, where you're just taking from the world, you're just taking and taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. And for some reason, it's never enough. And I think at some point you kind of have to hit that wall and be like, is there more? There has to be more. And if there isn't, you're just going to fall into like depression, apathy, or you're going to have to numb and stimulate yourself to the point where you forget about it. Right. And so that kind of was it for me. That kind of started that. I was like, man, what is the world selling me? They're selling me this idea of masculinity, this idea of fame, fortune, have your money right, go to the clubs, get the girls, drive the car, own a house. Like I did all of this and it still left me feeling kind of empty. And that for me was like, that was the wake up call. That I just realized I want to do something different. I want to figure out what actually will give my life purpose and meaning, so I don't have to numb my problems away with all of these addictive behaviors that I started to accrue.
Hmm.
So from there, it was like I need to get clean. So I took 6 months away from my life here because I needed to get away from a lot of the vices that were in my life. So I moved and joined a coaching, leadership, and volunteering program over in Croatia and Slovenia for about 6 months. I sold my car and rented my house and everything, just like
And
picked up and left for a bit uh, to create that space and create that separation. I was so blessed to be able to do that. Like a lot of people don't have the ability to get away from some of the stuff that they're involved in. Right. So super blessed to be able to do that. And from there, that really created enough space for me to really step back and see, okay, so what can I actually give to the world?
mm,
What do I have to give? Because taking obviously isn't fulfilling me. So what can I give? And when I came back to my city, that's when I started getting involved in personal training because I spent a lot of years as an athlete. And that was kind of like the only thing that I thought of, okay, I guess I can help people get biceps and
yeah.
abs. Yeah, I can help them do that. And that kind of led me down a little bit deeper because I was like, I started to ask, why do they want biceps and abs? And
Mm,
what is that going to bring to their life? What is that going to change about them? What are they actually looking for? Because a lot of people, they're looking for something in here and in here through their physical body.
mm,
And then I started sharing some of my thoughts, and I started sharing some of my writing, and I started sharing some of my poetry, and I started sharing some other stuff that I was a little bit more afraid to share,
mhm.
especially due to kind of like a lot of the stigma around masculinity and like be a man and go to the gym and that kind of stuff. So, and just one thing after another, and it's just been riding this wave. Whatever door that I come up to, I'm like, okay. People started asking me questions. They started relating to some of the things I was saying. And so I started answering some questions, and I started, allowing that to inspire me and really figure out what it is that people are looking for. And I really found kind of pulled a lot towards heartbreak, breakups, reinventing yourself, rebranding yourself, and really searching for things to bring you more meaning to your life. And here we are.
Damn, that is a story. It seems like you've a lot of people are stuck in this surface level area. It seems like you've gone the opposite and gone, how far down the rabbit hole, how far deep can I go to find the core messages? Is that something that you had an experience that you then, like a massive catalyst, or was it a kind of a thought process that you were like, oh, there's got to be more to it? Or was it one event that you were like transformed because of?
Question. I don't think that there was any one event. It was more like a series of events, a series of patterns. I try not to share too much of like details around some of that kind of stuff, just because I don't want to throw anybody else under the bus or expose any other people's stories and air out any of their things, right? But I was in a place where I had multiple women in my life, and I was struggling with multiple addictive behaviors, really struggling I couldn't even like sleep at night, like crazy insomnia, without making sure that I had somebody laying beside me or some sort of sedative in my system. Right. And it was just there, man. Like, the people that were close to me were encouraging me to get on antidepressants and seek help and this and that. And I didn't really take that seriously until there was 1 week where I started self-harming. So I started cutting a bit, and that didn't hurt enough. So then I started burning. And then from there, it was that for me, I think, I guess that would be the event that was like, you need help, man. Like, you don't, it was almost like there was a bit of ego there too, because I didn't want people to start seeing scars on my arms or anything like that. So I was like, oh man, I guess I do need to go talk to somebody. So that's when I first checked into therapy. That's when I first started being like, okay, I need to do some different things here.
It sounds like that was the catalyst, that was the moment. It was like bang, switched whole mentality. It was like a groundbreaking experience for you, a ground shattering. Oh, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, man. I know that would be it's hard because I always ask people their story, and I also don't want them to relive the story and create that narrative for them and continuously talk about it. That's not what you want, because that's bringing the past to the present, but it's interesting to hear where you come from. I didn't even know that. So it gives me a lot more perspective on the way that you look at things, because your thought patterns are, I've seen a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, coached a lot of people, and I've just interacted. And man, you're got a unique pattern. Has this something that you've always had? Is it upbringing thing? Is it just the way that your brain works a little bit? Because I urge all the listeners to go check out your TikToks, because they're just they're the wordplay, and I guess it comes from you being a writer, you expressing through that sort of avenue.
I guess a bit of both. I have a natural affinity for words. I've always really enjoyed them ever since I was really young, but I really put that side of myself aside for a lot of years to be the athlete, to attempt to be the athlete. and then when that didn't pan out at a professional level, I've always really enjoyed words and wordplay, and how you can kind of like move them and twist them, and you can create almost a feeling with words. If you can really dig down with words, and you can tie them as close as you can to the feeling of it, it's almost like you can taste it, man. I don't know. I can't really explain how it makes me feel, but it's great. But I hate numbers. Like, I hate math, hate like I dropped out of like every single thing that has to do with numbers. But if you give me words, I can definitely, I love being able to play with things like that.
And that really, really ties into the art of conversation. It really is an art form. To be able to speak, as you said, and create that emotion, that takes practice, that takes experience. That's not something that you're just like born with, and so I'm sure that you've done that for so many hours, so long, that you become proficient at it. That's what I said to a lot of the guys. I'm like, if you want to get better at speaking, the one thing you got to do is speak.
Exactly, man. Like, even if you look back at my first YouTube video, night and day from the way that I speak now. Like, I could still write well then, but being able to take it from paper to being able to have a conversation with somebody and have that back and forth and be confident with the words as they come out of your mouth and be a little bit more eloquent and more efficient with what you want to say and how you want to say it. Absolutely practice. Like, you can't, everything's practice. Confidence is practice, man.
Yeah, of course.
Like, the best free throw shooters in the league, that's practice. How many free throws did they take?
Thousands.
Exactly.
Hey, I was talking to a buddy the other day, and there was a statistic. I have to bring it up. I don't know what the actual scholarly paper was, but they showed that people only talk for about 15 to an hour per day in the length of just talking, right? Not in pauses or dialect, just the art of talking. And I was like, man, imagine, these people wanting to get better at it, and they're literally doing about 15 minutes a day. I was trying to do the numbers. I was like, man, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of time. It's good for other things, but talking is such a thing that it requires length, and it requires your vocal cadence, the ability to be able to speak and calm the mind at the same time, and be able to be present to the moment. There's a lot of facets to it,
Nice.
And so I think this is where a lot of people get stuffed up from there. And as you said, it would be a great sort of thing to see the difference. And that process is interesting to me, from where you start to where you're now, because you're the same sort of person, but you're different. If that makes sense. Your whole intrinsic wiring is different. Your neural circuitry is different.
Yeah.
Did you find that as you went on? Because I know for me, because I looked up to you as someone like, you were growing faster than me. I was looking at the way that you were creating your videos and being like, wow, man, this, he's changing. He's getting better and better and better. When we were like, well, I'm talking like 2019, 2020, OGs, bro.
Right from the beginning.
Did you find that change? And what was the kind of interesting things you found about yourself, especially being on camera, especially refining your concepts?
Man, it really is just kind of spending so much time writing and spending so much time talking and recording and pushing some of your limits. Like some of the big things, it was like recording the videos and then trying to make them without taking breaks. Cause you could record just like 15 seconds at a time and like splice them together. Right. Or you can try and like get that. How can you try and say that whole thought without cutting it up and making it just like one big video? And that was really hard. So I started trying to do that more. And then I started getting on lives, man, getting on my first live, that was nerve-wracking because now you can't doctor it. Now you can't, right? And so that's
one
really,
take,
really vulnerable.
That's it.
One take, that's it. And people are watching you live, and you don't know who could be screen recording, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So you got to be really careful with the things that you say and how you say them at the same time. Social media is quite fickle that way. You say one thing, that's it, canceled, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and just continuing to progress and push myself in different ways that I can kind of like, how can I say this? And how can I say this in another way? Even like the last thing I did was like anti-advice. So rather than giving like good advice, giving bad advice on purpose, like really satirically, right? How can you push the envelope of the way that you can say things, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. We were very similar, where it was like, I'll tell you the things not to do, like how to not get over a breakup, how to not get the girl, the satirical, as you said, the satirical thing. All right. So we have lots of questions, and I love this because we really did go deep into it. So one of the videos, we have about 10 subjects, and I love this, and we can go off tangents, we can do everything, because I know we're both talkers. Your perspective. So you've been in Canada for the last, over the C word, the whole pandemic kind of thing. You've been in Canada. And I've talked to a couple of buddies, especially in Canada. From your perspective, how has dating changed over the last 2 years for you? What are the things that you've seen that maybe no one else has seen or no one's picked up on, that you've seen a huge shift in that cultural market, that sort of idea of, people coming together and people dating and people getting to know each other?
Ooh, okay. How can I take that on a path that's a little less traveled? Maybe so much more has been pushed online than ever. Right? It's everything's been online and going that direction, but it was like forced online. Right? And so I think a lot is really like, you can really hide a lot of who you are. You can like really doctor your mask and pretend to be things you're not. And you don't have to be out around your friends, out around your family, out in public, out. And so it really can create a pretty poor dynamic that way. I heard an analogy and it really stuck with me. It was like, when it comes to red flags, when it comes to a flag, you can see the flag when it's facing you this way. But as soon as the flag goes here, boom, disappears.
That's big.
Right? Crazy. And so a lot of times that's what happens in relationships. We're just with this one-on-one person and we don't see any of the red flags. But if we actually had some people around us by our side, they all see it, man. And how many times are our friends and our family being like, yo, no, that's a red flag. No, this person isn't this. And then a lot of times we just shut them out anyways and push them all away and be like, no, you're all wrong. You don't believe in love. So,
Yeah.
but
Man,
yeah,
that's a fucking concept I've never heard broken down. Holy shit. Of course, because your friends and family, it's like the great analogy of like a doctor can't self-diagnose himself or herself because they're too close to the disease. They're too emotionally invested.
yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely, and Canada has been big for that. You've seen obviously through that. We're very similar. I guess our countries are very similar. You know what I mean? We've been hard hit, both of us. So yeah, that's fucking blowing my mind already.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like when I think about it, that's probably one of the biggest ways, because isolation is like a manipulator's best friend,
Yeah,
right? And
of
so,
course.
and sometimes we're not manipulating maliciously either, right? But we want acceptance and we don't want rejection. And a lot of the times we put on a facade and we because we're trying to get what we want. We're trying to be loved. We're trying to be right. That's at the end of the day, that's the core of it. We want to be loved and we want to feel important and we want to be valued and we don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
And we'll do all kinds of things to achieve those things.
Yeah. Even sometimes they bring the ladder, they bring, being vulnerable also opens up the door to that. But people are like, no, I only want this. I don't want that. And I'm like, well, they're the law of duality, good with bad, bad with it, good and evil, and that's what I think a lot of people, I teach them on the law of duality and how both of them are equal or opposite. They're both just as good or just as important as one another. And they're like, no, I just want this. I don't want that. And I'm like, well, interesting. So I take them through the path of like, okay, well, you had this bad thing that happened to you. And what were the ramifications because of that? Or what were the good things that happened from that? And I realized sometimes a bad moment or bad experience was the thing that pushed them to that higher level, that ground zero was a like a trampoline effect to get to where they wanted to.
Absolutely, man. Like I think that's often the case. We're pretty reactive overall, human beings. We're not always the most proactive. A lot of times it takes like getting hit in the face by something for us to kind of like change. We have to get the diagnosis and then we change our behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And it's unfortunate that we're so much like that. And so I guess that's one of the questions that I really am wrestling with. How do we mitigate that? How do we help people become more proactive so they don't have to go through so much? How do you raise the rock bottom up a little higher, right? So you don't have to crash to that depth and get hit that hard in order to change. How do we bring that up a little bit? And I think that's kind of the direction that I'm really wanting to learn more about that, because I don't really know. I don't really know. I don't really have the answers for that, but I'd like to get in touch with some people and have that conversation. Like, how do we raise the bottom? How do we raise that rock bottom?
Yeah. So people don't have to go through traumas, pain bodies to experience
as much.
As much. Yeah. Well, that's so funny because it brings in a lot of the ideas of it. Like I'm a big advocate of extreme, to a point where it's almost obnoxious, extreme self-awareness of self, of pattern recognition within yourself, within others, within your environment. Being there's a show called Altered Carbon. It's basically the kind of sci-fi show, and they talk about this envoy is someone that takes in all stimulus of the environment and runs it through kind of like layers in themselves to be able to pattern recognition, be able to feel what they're feeling, feel sort of things, and be self-aware. And so I want to know what your idea on that is, especially self-awareness, because for me, it's been a big advocator. I've almost been too self-aware, and sometimes it's hindered me a little bit too, because I might, second guess myself, or I might be a little anxious when I'm making decisions. And I've had to kind of override those things with a few mentalities and a few belief systems, like number one, no matter what decision I make, it's good anyway, whether it's good or bad. It leads me to a new direction. So that'll be a mindset. So I just make a decision. But I want to know your ideas on self-awareness and the importance of that. Or if you don't think it's important, there's other things that might be more important than that.
Okay. I love that you're about that. Like accountability, super
Yeah.
important.
Mm.
Accountability is the key to freedom.
Yeah.
But it's also the key to like a lot of people that you'll get depressed, man. Like there's some studies, like as you become more self-aware, sometimes you can actually struggle more. There's some truth to the cliche, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some definite truth to that. So as much as I'm like, I love self-awareness, I love accountability, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But then also I'm kind of like, man, sometimes I really wish that I wasn't like that. I wish I could just like unplug and just not care. Right.
Yes.
So what would I say about it? Like for me, man, it's really been about letting go of what I can't control. There's like the serenity prayer. It's grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that for me is like the key to not driving yourself absolutely bonkers with your accountability, because there's a lot of things in life you can't control.
Yeah.
And if you focus, right. And if you focus your energy and time and trying to coerce things that you can't control, this includes other people's decisions. Like if this person's going to cheat on you, if this person's going to lie, like all of those things, you can't control that.
No. Yeah.
And if you spend your energy trying to control that and being hyper aware of all these things in your environment and your surroundings that you can't control, you're going to be out of control.
Yeah.
And so really coming into an awareness of what is within your control, that for me has been the key. So, okay, yeah, I can control this, I can control that. And how do I make myself as skillful with those things so then I can be as effective in my environment as possible?
The exact paradox of trying to control everything, you become out of control. Wow, yeah, that's fucking, yeah, that's deep, because it gets to a level where a lot of things are now filtered through that, and your experience through life can be better. And that's what I teach too, being able to be self-aware so you can actually identify, okay, look, what can I control, what can't I control? You can't control how people are going to react, but you can control the way that you present yourself. That's it.
Yes.
So just work on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I always tell everyone, I'm like, this is why the idea of the podcast is called Sampled, even though it has my name in it. It's a sample of your personality. It's always a sample that you're showing everyone, and you want to show the most congruent, authentic version or sample of yourself.
I love that, man.
Yeah,
good play on words too.
That's
Good play on
it.
words.
I thought you liked it. Yeah,
I do.
So that was your biggest takeaway with the dating, especially with the push online. It was almost, as you said, it was forced, forced upon people, and so different things. I know from here, I come from. So where I am is a very Las Vegas type place in Australia called the Gold Coast. Very vanity driven, very metrics, very numbers focused and status focused, which has been interesting because it's been able to allow me to bring a spiritual element to this place, as well as the status sort of game, and being able to improve, especially the men that I teach here, being able to improve them from that spiritual realm, which is definitely, I see you have a big element to a lot of your teachings, that spirituality, that connection to a higher energy or energies in general. And so I'd love for you to elaborate more on sort of the concepts that you like to play around with in that sort of spirituality, mixed with being able to improve yourself socially and be able to be the best version of yourself.
Okay, that's a pretty broad topic.
I could get more specific.
Okay.
In terms of, okay, like take a someone that's just graduated high school, someone that's just maybe working in their job, they want to become the best version of themselves. What practices spiritually, energetically, being on their purpose, can they start to incorporate into their life?
Okay, So faith for me and spirituality for me really, one of the biggest things that in my experience, it was like, my life's not just about me.
Mhm.
Faith actually is a great way to humble yourself,
Mhm.
right? So it's like, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not the author. I'm not the alpha and omega. I'm not like the main character of
Mhm.
sorts. Like, I don't write the story. I'm the main character of my story, but I'm not writing the story. I wouldn't write that, somebody that I love gets sick, or somebody that I love, passes away in a motorcycle accident. I wouldn't have wrote those things into my life,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't have wrote those things into my life. So I don't have control over that kind of stuff. And so faith really allows me to kind of bring my ego down a little bit,
Mhm.
but it also, faith for me has been a place that encourages me to think about more than just what the world is selling me, right? Then all the things that are being sold to me as idols, right?
Mm.
Money, fame, clout,
Yeah.
whatever, right? I want to be more than that. I want to believe in something that supersedes that. I want to
Mm.
believe in something that helps me supersede my own strength, my own patience, my own, right? You can only give from what you have received, right?
Mm.
So if I'm living out of Levi's experiences, my traumas, my betrayals, the love that was given to me, the definition, the blueprint that was given to me by my parents and by my experiences, that's all I can really give to the world to the best of my ability. But if I can receive a type of love, regardless of what you believe in, believing in God, believing in the universe, but if I can receive a type of love from God
Mm.
that goes beyond what I'm capable of, that's the love that I can give, right? And I think there's something really powerful about that. I've really found that powerful in my own life. So I think that for me, and it sets the bar at a different level, right? Rather than having the bar set by people, by Hollywood, by my peers, I want the bar to be set above that. Okay, so I'm going to set the bar, as far as my faith goes, and
Mm.
that's going to challenge me to step above, my own, the constructs that are sold to me by the world.
Yeah, the materialistic world that we all play in, per
Right.
se. You know what I mean? It takes you a level that's amazing, because that really paints a picture for people to understand, that they are that higher being. They are that person that is more than just their wants and urges that
Mhm.
they might have, which is fantastic. I love that, because man, you just have a way with the words, bro. That's the thing.
Thank you.
I love it. It paints such a picture, because you see, a lot of people, it was interesting that you're talking about ego, because you see a lot of figures nowadays in popular society, especially in this kind of field that we both in, and they're very ego driven, very metric orientated, very my way or the highway. Pretty
Mhm.
well. That's a great that covers it. And so you come with this fresh take, where it's taking that out of it, becoming the same, if not a better version of yourself, just not 100% extreme boundary driven. It's more with a
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
rather than boundaries, so it's, instead
Yeah.
of a restriction, it's the opposite of restriction, a kind of just an opening up almost.
Yeah. It's almost more like a direction
Mm.
than, right. Sometimes I think, boundaries, oh, restriction, but really it's honing you into, like, you can't just go everywhere. You
Yeah.
can't go north, south, east, and west all at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So having boundaries actually makes you more successful, even like in a bowling alley. If you put
Mm.
the bumpers up, you're not going to get so many gutter balls. You're not going to you're not
Yeah.
going to you're not going to end up in the gutters of life so often if you
Mm.
put some boundaries in. Boundaries will actually help you hit more pins. It's going to help you be more successful. It's going to help you be more focused in a specific direction, so you can be more successful in where you want to go. So, yeah.
Damn, yeah, no, that is good, especially with, the experience of the emotional turmoil we've been through. I think people have understood. Okay, well, my energetic body is something I've got to look after now, not
Mhm.
destroy with every sort of stimulus under the sun. The deep-rooted insecurity within most men of today, controlling most of their actions, is what I really want to get into. And
Okay.
I think it's very interesting how, I was watching a Kevin Samuels thing too last night. He was saying that the amount of women that you sleep with is not an indicator of how masculine of a man you are. These two metrics don't align. And especially, we have a syndrome in Australia called tall poppy syndrome. I don't know if you know of it, where
No.
as poppies grow, the tallest poppy gets cut by the rotors of the farming, the machines kind of thing, the
Yeah.
lawnmowers and stuff. So all the poppies are usually the same, right?
Yeah.
And so as I've came up in this dating culture, I was like a dating coach. A lot of the metrics that I was using back in 2014, 2013 was, all of these metrics that a lot of guys use,
Yes.
and I was finding that even that tall poppy syndrome was happening with my peers, especially my high school friends. I have no high school friends left that fuck with me because
Yeah.
of that
Wow.
era that I was going through, where it was always about a number. It was always about how attractive the girl was. The number, it was all number metrics,
Yes.
And I was basing my masculinity through an insecurity, obviously, a huge insecurity, on fulfilling that insecurity with numbers, with the perceived notion that I could get the girl or I could get this. But now it's come full circle to more of a holistic approach, where it's like I more go in alignment with who I am, my purpose, as you said, the boundaries, and then become driven towards one sort of focus rather than trying to
Yeah.
prove it. So I'd love your idea about insecurity within the men of today's society.
Okay. Big topic.
Big topic, and we can
Big
talk about, we
topic.
can break it down into
Yeah,
some.
bro. No,
Yeah.
that's good. It's good. It's good. Let's get after it. You know what? I totally hear that, man. And the metrics is what that's what you see pushed a lot.
Yeah.
The metrics, the numbers. And I don't think we can ignore the metrics, because there's going to be some truth to them. There's a reason why that they exist. There's some truth to these things, right? You have your money right, you're over 6 feet tall, you have if you have these certain numbers, you are going to have much more success of opportunity, more than anything else. So that's what I would say about the metrics that are really popularized right now, is that it's really going to help you be more successful at getting your foot in the door. It's not necessarily going to help you build a home, but it's going to get your foot into a lot of doors. If you look good, smell good, got the money right, nice and tall, got your tan on, right? If you get all those things in a line, if you get your ducks in a row, you can get your foot into a lot of doors. You can get your body into a lot of beds. But does that mean that you're going to be able to build a successful relationship and a successful home? So then it really does come down to what is your directive? What is it that you actually want to be? Right? Do you want to be, a father? Do you want to be the head of a home? Do you want to be like, is that who you want to be? Because if that's who you're telling me that you want to be, you can't be behaving like this right now, because you can't have both. You don't really get both. You can't tell me, oh yeah, I want to play in the NBA, but you're practicing soccer or football.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You don't get to do all this, whatever. But it's not, you don't get to say, oh, I want to be, yeah, this is what I want to be. I want to go in direction A, but then you're heading in direction B. It doesn't work that way.
The incongruencies there, almost.
Exactly. Like there's a lack of integrity, and integrity for me, that's what I've really kind of boiled it down to. What I really believe is the high value. Like value is something that is worth investing in. Like it's going to increase in value. It's going to have a return on investment. Something that has integrity. Somebody that has integrity is going to definitely be a great investment. Somebody who says what they mean and means what they say and does what they say they're going to do, and they're honest and they're open with it, no matter what direction it is that they want. You can trust that when you invest your time, energy, and love into this person, you're going to get back exactly what they said, really. So
with those qualities, they're very attractive also, because they're almost a novelty nowadays.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, that they're a novelty, and where they're back in the day, they used to be very much honed in two fundamental ways of men, basically. That integrity, stick to your word, be able to, go through with what your actions, say what you mean what you say, those little sort of things, they don't seem to be as prevalent nowadays. It's more just different things.
Yeah. And that's also kind of like, I mean, integrity even means if you tell me that you'd like to be more financially stable, then what are you doing right now? Have you ever set a budget? No? Okay, then you're a liar.
Yep.
Right? Are you telling me, if you can tell me, you can look me in my eyes and say like, I think physical health is important, and you're not treating your body well, you're a liar.
Yeah.
Like you can't tell me that this is what you want and this is what you value and this is what you believe in and you think this is important, but you're not doing anything about it.
That's the Gold Coast. Big buff boys, coke every night of the week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And you're like a fitness coach. And I'm like, man, you're not practicing anything. Wow, that's where there's a lack of integrity between what they're doing, what they're saying, almost.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I see that a lot. More than ever. Yeah, hell yeah.
I think that's a place where I think a lot of people's mental health starts to go downhill, like a lack of integrity. So the dictionary definition of integrity is undivided, whole and undivided. And I think when we start to sell out on our integrity, we begin to divide ourselves into multiple people, right? And if we're divided, we start to spread ourselves out and we start to like, our brains start to split and our personalities start to split and we start to like literally pull ourselves apart at the seams. And the only thing like holding us together often will turn to like numbing things and stimulating things in order to like not look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because if we ever stopped and looked in the mirror, man, we can't even recognize who that is, because who is that? It's just this mangled mess that has no integrity. And that for me was a big thing for me is when I had the least amount of integrity in my life, when there was a lot of lying, when there was a lot of behaviors that I didn't really want to be involved in, like deep down, that's when I couldn't sleep at night. That's when I struggled with night terrors. That's when I struggled with addictions, because I was trying to cover up this trauma of splitting myself into all these different people, really.
And your energetic body was feeling it and portraying. Wow, that's crazy. I always talk that the body knows more than you think. The body knows.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially, like if you're going up to, especially when you're going up and doing a cold approach and you're feeling nervous, you're going to exhibit signs of nervousness. The best way to not be nervous is to literally speak that you're nervous. Speak that congruent truth is the most, and that way it's actually comes off more in your favor than you ever would have thought.
Dude, it's so counterintuitive, right? Like to go up and tell her like, hey, I'm like so nervous to be doing this right now. And you actually get to stay within your integrity. That's great. Yeah.
That humanistic element. And that's attractive. Honesty. Like legit honesty. I remember reading Radical Honesty by Brad Blant. I don't know if you read that book.
No, I have not.
That was pretty powerful about he promotes 100% honesty, which I feel can get you in a little bit of trouble, So I tone it back to about 95 because, 100% honesty. Some of the stuff I definitely recommend it because that book is like, wow, that's like, holy hell. And he does make some good points, but 100% honesty, it's not always amazing. As I've proven, I was like, yeah, I'll go do all the tactics out of the book. And then I'm like, oh shit, why are like 10 people angry at me? I'm like, oh shit, okay, maybe just turn it back a little bit. So I found a good avenue for me, at least, anyway. But that's crazy, and that's where you think the insecurity lies, especially in the integrity between the link between what people are doing and what they're actually wanting to do, almost.
I do think that's one of the least, it's not really talked about that much, so I do think it's one of those issues that I like to talk about, because I like to sometimes try and say some things that maybe you haven't thought of. So I think that's something that's out there that I would love to have more people kind of asking themselves.
Where does my integrity lie? Where does that present itself? Because that was always my thing. I would have a look, especially, and I've changed myself. I went from a lot of kind of meaningless one night stands, and then I'd be like, why are these things soul sucking? Why do I feel energetically depleted after
Yeah.
it, you know. And it's almost like when you know, sometimes I was feeling very similar effects when you would do, you know, MDMA, and then you'd on the come down, you would be lack of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, that
Yeah.
would be leaving your body. And I'm like, wow, and then, you know, I found more where I was more wanting in more kind of like partnerships, more maybe not tangible things that are connected through, you know, weird titles, but more just things that I found. And that found that I was having those, oh, that was more in alignment with me. You
Mm.
felt rejuvenated, you felt
Yeah.
happy, and you're like,
Yeah.
that's where that bliss that you're supposed to live in. That's really a concept that a lot of people need to take on.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about like, because that instant gratification, that's a killer.
Oh,
That's a killer, man. The dope, like just dopamine highs and lows all the time.
yeah.
And you're just like frying your receptors over and over and over and over.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I always talk about, I don't know what if you know or talk about long-term gratification things, more like your meditation, your journaling, your spirituality, even though they don't have that effects. And we're so conditioned in society, rich for the overnight success, get rich quick, you know,
Yes.
put it in
Everything
Bitcoin.
now.
Yeah, put it in
Everything
Bitcoin
now.
or raid. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, one point they're promoting that you're, you know, get rich quick now, like you're not going to live for another 65 years, you know.
Mm.
And then on the other hand, it's just like, oh, you got to get it in quick, you got to get all this stuff before you die and all this kind of thing. So even the MSN in mainstream media is definitely conflicted, you know, and that's where their lack of integrity is
Yeah.
too. Wow. Yeah. So it is promoted a lot more than now. You make me more aware. Wow. Fantastic stuff. And what could they do? What could men do, you know, right now? Say if they're listening to this, and women too, what are the things that they can do to become more in alignment with their integrity? Like say they're at home right now, they're listening to this, they're like, okay, Levi's telling me to be more integrative. I don't know if that's a word, but more in alignment with
We'll
their
go with it,
integrity. Yeah, we'll go with it. It's just sounded great. What are the sort of the action steps that you would say, you know what, guys, this week, do this? Just one or two things.
I think something that is really underestimated
Mhm.
is a role model.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Role model. I mean, you think about young athletes,
Mhm.
you'd be hard pressed to find some kid who like wants to go pro who doesn't have like a star athlete that they're trying to emulate.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have that, if you don't have anything to look at, if you don't have coaches, if you don't have people teaching you how to play the game, like, what are you going to do? Here, let me give you a basketball and just like, okay, go make the
Good
NBA.
luck.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
you're just going to be directionless, and you might think you're the best ever if you never play with anybody. You're just like by yourself playing with this. And I think that's sometimes that's what we can feel like. We're doing so good. We're just like spending all this energy. Oh, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm doing this self-help. But then it doesn't translate into our relationships. And we keep wondering why we're not really getting anywhere. Well, where is it you're trying to go though? Right? Who is like, what is it that you're trying to build? And do you have anybody in your life who is there that you're trying to look up to? Because a lot of times, I mean, that's one of the big things is a lot of times the blueprint that we're given from our parents isn't always a great one. Right. And they did the best they could with what they had. They gave us the tools that they were given by their parents and so on and so forth. These generational tools, these generational traumas and scars and experiences. But if that's the case, okay, well, if I don't want to be like that, what do I want to be like? Who's my role model? And that's something that I think we in society right now is, who are our role models? If half our role models are half our ages, nobody can act their age anymore. Well, I mean, like, even look at like a lot, look at a lot of the celebrities. Like a lot of times we're saying like once somebody's over like 30 years old, oh, you're too old, you're cut off. And we like worship children.
Yeah.
And that seems to be more and more the case. Like if you look back in the 80s and the earlier days of Hollywood, our superstars, the people we looked up to, were full grown adults. Right. Yeah. And I think that is having an effect on society. But really, man, like who is really setting that bar for where you want to be and who you want to be as a man? Like, do you have some guys that you look up to that is like, yeah, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to be more like that. Because that's actually going to give you a direction to move towards. That's going to give you something to move towards. Because if you don't have a direction, you'll just go like this. You just keep traveling in circles, and you'll think you can run as fast as you can. You're real good at running in circles, but until you really figure out where you want to go and what type of man you want to be, well, that's it.
That's powerful. That one. Yeah. Fuck yeah. And they can do that next week, next month, next year. They can find that person. And I always say, like, don't try to find your mentor, but don't force it. Don't force your coach. You'll know it when it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. You'll know it because you just resonate wholeheartedly with them. Some things you may not agree with, but you do that paradox. There's a lot of paradoxes in what I teach. The you look for it, but you're not trying to search for it, like not hardcore trying to find it. It'll come to you.
Word, man. Like, yeah, my question would be like, so what would be your advice on how to find some of the role models these days? Like, I mean, the world's pretty connected with the internet and everything. So what advice would you give to kind of like find out the type of man that you want to emulate, that you want to move towards?
Yeah, good, really good question. I would have a look at my role models that I have, and if I have any in my life. So say, for me, it was my dad. So I had my dad, which was good. Another one, I had my grandfather. And I'm talking about men because for a woman, I think go for woman mentors. For a man, I think man mentors. I just think it's much more in alignment, and they can speak the language of those people very well. And I say people, I mean gender. They can speak the language very wholeheartedly, and that's what I found, because that's for myself and I've seen with other people. So that's more of a judgment. But don't get me wrong, I do have woman mentors in my life, especially in certain areas that I look up to, my grandmother and this and that, and some other people. But first of all, I would look at, I kind of butchered that a little bit, but it's all right. I butchered. I was
I'm with you, bro. I'm with you, bro.
Yeah, I was just like, I was trying to it's like you're treading the tightrope. But anyways, at least I'm honest. Yeah. So I'd have a look at those kind of things. I'm like, okay, well, what other areas are they not fulfilling? And so for that, your father, your grandfather can only fulfill so much, and so I'm like, okay, well, maybe it might be an older brother, and they can only fulfill so much. So I really thought to myself, when I was finding my mentors, and I still have a mentor to this day, okay, what's someone that I have no actual connection with at all? No connection, no family relationship, no friendship, no nothing. Something that's complete and random. And so a lot of the time I would be inquisitive to other people's lives. Number one. So I would find out someone that may be in a similar role. And a lot of my mentors are alive. They're not, your Dale Carnegie's or anything, just because I feel like I can't connect with them on that living level, like they're living the present moment. But don't get me wrong, I have associated with a lot of those people, read a lot of those books. Reading is a big one to find it. A lot of my mentors that I found have come through books. A lot of them have come through YouTube. People being able to put out information. But again, I would be inquisitive of people's lives. So again, my very first mentor I found through the game, the book by Neil Strauss. That's where I found my first mentor, someone that I was so deep down. I'll give you an analogy. I had a breakup, and then I got addicted to a lot of pharmaceuticals. And on that 10-month journey down that downward spiral, it ended up that there was a point where I had everything lined out. I lined out all the drugs. I had the water, and I was about to do it about 20 minutes. And then from there, I was like, you know what, just 20 more minutes on YouTube, just 20 more minutes, just have a look, because YouTube only gave me the satisfaction of just feeling something at that time. And the breakup was just horrendous. And we'll get into breakups, especially because, from having a bad experience and then a good experience, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what the difference between the two are. So from there, I just searched that last 20 minutes, and I was like, yo, I found a video that resonated with me. So the video was with two guys that are actually going to come on the podcast, two people that saved my life from like literally killing myself. So it was an Elliot Hulse and an Owen Cook video, and Owen went on, which was the video was called 2 Paths to Mastery. right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, it just hit me with me. And then I went really far into Elliot. Elliot was Elliot Hulse, for the guys that don't know, someone that just put out thousands upon thousands. And one of them was breakup cures and this and that. And Owen had a few of them. And then from there, that saved my life. And so I was at a point where I was so deep down, and I found two people that were mentors, boom, straight away. But it was only because I used to search YouTube. I used to search people's lives and different things, and you never know who's going to pop out and just resonate wholeheartedly with you. But you still have to do the searching, the inquisitiveness. So I would say be inquisitive of different other people that, as you said, may be ahead of you, definitely ahead of you, that may be that pinnacle age. So if you're an 18-year-old kid looking for someone that may be in their 30s, where you're going to grow into, I wouldn't probably say if you're 18, look for a 19-year-old. But then again, I know some 19-year-old kids, especially at the last place I live, that are just crushing it. So it comes in all sorts of shapes. But yeah, inquisitive nature about other people's lives would where I did it, especially.
Yeah, cool. Love that, man.
Something a bit different. At least I tightrope walked that. Okay.
That the men versus women topic can get a little bit hairy sometimes.
It can because you want to say, it's real funny because I've seen people online, they're very congruent with it. They're very just like shoot from the hip basically without even thinking. And then you got other people that want to present like me, they want to present that idea in the best way possible so that people don't misinterpret it. And misinterpret it, every single person that has ever watched my video has probably done, because everyone's experiencing that video from a different realm, different filters. So as you said, it's hairy.
Yeah, there's no perfect way to say things. And I mean, like when you stand for something, once in a while you might step on some toes, and you can't avoid that. There's going to be times like people are going to get triggered by this, or going to get triggered by that. But I think helpful is really important. And helpful is something that, a lot of times people are saying things and there's a lot of clickbait, a lot of clout, a lot of controversy. Because if you can pit people against each other, if you can make like a bad guy and a good guy and create controversy, you're going to get, that's where clout comes from, like creating controversy. A lot of times if you're, people want that. People want to be like mad and blame somebody. So, you'll have that, women saying these things about men, and all the other women that have been wounded are all like, yeah. Or you have men saying these things about women, and all the wounded men are like, yeah. And then, and everybody's their egos are being validated and their wounds are being validated. And so, and it just becomes like, that's not actually helpful. It feels good. It feels good when you're a wounded guy and you're watching some girl that you never even wouldn't even have a chance with get kicked off a podcast. That feels good. And you're like, yeah, you tell those bitches. Like, but at the end of the day, man, like this is not always the most helpful conversation, because at the end of the day, we heal together. Yeah, we heal together. We can't do that like bashing each other thing. That's not actually going to get us anywhere productive at the end of the day.
I love that idea, especially too, because then they go tell their friends and they're using that sort of energy. And I like the idea of trauma bonding or a drama bonding, which is one. They use that drama to bond more with their friends. So they feel, as they said, their ego validated. They feel more connected with their friend. They feel their social status increasing. And it's like, wow, it's so fascinating the way the human brain works. And this is what people don't know, how complex it does it does things for reasons that we may not be aware of, impulses like that, and you wouldn't think that canceling this girl was really because he wanted to be closer to his friend. But you see the segue, and that's where it ends up. And you're like, how did that work? And as you said, people, I remember we had I used to live with my dad, and then we had a guy that lived next to us. He was a drug addict, and he was in heroin, and he comes up to me and he's like, we were like, mate, you got to get off it. You got to get. He's like, you don't think I do this because I don't like it. I do it because I want to do it. I like to do it. And it makes me realize that cancel culture, these people are stuck in this loop of getting the validation from what they're doing. Their insecurities are turning into traumas, and the way to really to feed it, let's just say, like a pet, you know, like a pet that's inside them, is to do those things. And then it's like a hungry body. It's like, oh, you got to feed me. And so it starts to hijack the brain. So I feel, you know, Gary Vee's always instilled with me, you got to feel very sorry for these people, the way that, not sorry is a bad word, but like you got to feel a bit of empathy towards them for the way that thing, because you're not operating like they are. They're operating like that. And and me and you are basically just trying to get you out of that sort of that haze, that daze, that derpiness of like, this is something that you need to focus on, because this will translate into so many other areas of your life.
Yeah.
And the great one I see is, I want to get your perspective, is poison dripping, especially in relationships. So the way that, you know, they interact, where, you know, they're kind of getting validation from drama and this and that, they start to bring into the relationships. They bring the baggage from where their traumas are, maybe in previous relationships and stuff like that. How is someone able to stop bringing that baggage into a relationship?
Ooh, okay. I think, man, I know building healthy relationships, pretty new to me.
Okay.
I'm well versed with being toxic and being in a lot of toxic situations and being on both sides of that. But stepping into being a healthier man and having healthier relationships, totally different ballgame. And a lot of that is going to be about communication, where I've got to have that communication with this person and letting them know, like, hey, this is something that I struggle with. It's not about you, right? It's about, you know, I'm feeling this type of way because of, this is a trigger for me, because of some of the stuff that I went through previously. And I need to let you know that this isn't just about you. And I don't want you to take it so personally, because as soon as we start taking things really personally, that's when it gets really bad. That's when the fight or flight comes up. We start to say things. And once you say something, you can't take it back. Right. And I think that's where that poison really becomes apparent, is when we get upset, when we get into fight or flight response, or we're backed against a wall, we will say and do just about anything like that. You just see red. And then you just say that thing. And once you've said that thing, that's there. That is a knife in that person's back. And that's not going anywhere, man. Once you've said that, and then, you know, maybe they say something back, so then you got a knife in your back, and then you just kind of, it's almost like you start now just trading blows for the rest of the relationship, and whoever bleeds out first loses. And that is what I see so many relationships being like. And there's just a lack of communication around conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the bread and butter, man, for when it comes to this kind of stuff. So when you're getting that fight or flight response, when you feel those emotions coming up and you feel yourself getting triggered, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because you don't want to be fighting against this person. You're fighting with this person. You're fighting for this person. This person is in a relationship with you. And so for you to, you know, throw a left hook, and that's not going to be actually helpful. It might feel good in the moment. It might feel good. That's what you want to do because you're feeling hurt. But we got to be able to step back. We got to be able to step back from that and understand, okay, I'm getting triggered. I'm getting emotionally flooded. And as I'm getting emotionally flooded, I've got to be able to recognize that and be able to take some space and step back. But then, you know, then you're dealing with abandonment. Some people don't want to, like, oh, you always run, you always get in your car, you always go, but you have to, like, communicate, man. Like, so this topic for me is a little bit, it's so broad that it's going to be really difficult to really say anything too meaningful, like really, really short. But at the end of the day, like, when it comes to, you know, taking the dealing with those traumas within a relationship with another person, just recognizing that, like, hey, when we're getting upset, it's not like we're dealing with two full-grown adults here. We're dealing with, like, the traumatized child within them, right? So we're not like two full-grown adults here. It's like this is wounded 7-year-old Levi feeling this type of way. And that's why I'm reacting like I'm a child. And you really revert back to a lot of times where that trauma was really happening to you. and the coping mechanisms that worked for you then. So if screaming and raising your voice worked for you back then, you're going to continue to do that.
Damn. Yeah, of
Right?
course.
So we're still operating from that, like wherever a lot of that trauma happened, whatever worked for us then, whatever tool, whatever weapon worked back then to get us out of that corner, we continue to use it. 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 And yeah, I just really see a lot of times we're not very good at partnering through conflict. And then once something gets said, and it just really starts to erode from there. It really, really does, man. Like I can remember how many things still sometimes play in my mind that have been said. That's still kind of like, those little tapes that play over your identity, that play over your self-worth, little things that a parent might have said, a bully might have said, a girlfriend might have said. And you remember those things, and they stay tied to you. They stay tied to you. And it's really hard to come back from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I know with like, there's a couple of words for me. Words like stagnation was one big one. Oh, that's like, that like cuts you like a knife going through butter,
Yeah.
You're like, whoa. And so yeah, I don't know about you, but I've done a lot of work with those things, sat with those words.
Yeah.
And understood that, okay, well, the years after that was said, a lot of my actions were filtered through that one word. That's it.
Yeah.
Of like constantly having to be doing something, constantly having to not be at rest, just be doing. And it was interesting, we talk about that. That was a lower egoist, like an ego motivation to banish that word from me, to never be stagnant. It's funny how words, as you said before at the start, they can convey so much emotion. That is, that over actions, even, actions sometimes don't even have the power that word, or like a word will.
Yeah. No, man, words have immense power. That would be a question that I would challenge people, is like, what are the words? What are the statements that play in your mind that are driving you, whether good or bad? Right? Like, I'm not enough. I'm stagnant. I'm this. I'm that. Right? Who told you that?
Yeah.
And are you still living as a victim to it?
Yeah. That's insane. There was a book I was reading. I had to put it down for 3 days after hearing the very first like word. I don't know if you're familiar with the Toltec philosophies of Don Miguel Ruiz and like junior and senior. So this one was about attachment, the 5 levels of attachment. And he was talking about his grandma said, are you using knowledge, or is knowledge using you? And from there, I was blown away from 3 days understanding that one concept, and it can be applicable to words. Are you using words, or are words using you?
Word. Okay, man.
Yeah.
Just put me into an existential crisis. Why don't you? Thank you.
But yeah, that was big. I had to put it down for 3 days. I was like, yo, I can't read any more of this book. I was listening to it in the audio, like, so I was about to go for a drive. I'm like, yep, got this book. 1 minute in, I'm like, nah, that's it, done. I drove for the next like 30 minutes just being like, what the? I don't know, it just hits you.
What did that say to you, bro?
With are you using knowledge, or is knowledge using you? It was it really hit me on the confirmation bias that a lot of people have, that no one in this world is there are some sort human dynamic things that no one is exempt from. Not any politician, not any celebrity, not any lay person. I would say just the general population, not any homeless person. We all have this cognitive bias of wanting to be right. So we will find evidence. So with this idea that we used to teach back in the day, and it's fantastic. It's called your RAS, your reticular activation system, right? So your selective focus, what your prefrontal cortex focuses on, right? So I have this analogy. It's like if I told you, Levi, hey, it's National Blue Car Day today, And you're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Like I show you everything, and you're like, oh shit, okay. So now I've primed your brain, and you're like, oh yeah, there's a blue car. Like you've become aware of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a blue car. There's a blue car. And you're like, yo, Sam, what the fuck? It was national. Like I saw so many blue cars like today. Yo, I saw this
Yeah.
Nissan. I saw this, like, I even saw a blue Lamborghini. And I'm like, yo, Levi, I'm so sorry. I got it wrong. Here's the article. It was actually National Purple Car Day today, like it was supposed to be. And you're like, no. It was like I saw all the blues. But
Yeah.
in that day, it was actually National Purple Car Day. So you're selectively focusing on the things that you want to focus on, you know?
Yeah.
So say if you have a belief and that's you have a bit of knowledge, you're selecting on knowledge that wants to confirm that, because humans want to be right always.
Yeah.
You know? And so with my teachings, I've known that for a lot of years, that you have a right, you know, knowledge wants to find more knowledge to confirm that knowledge or that belief.
Yeah.
And my constant thing was always challenging the status quo, always challenging my beliefs that they could be proven wrong. Because if you know anything about science, it doesn't matter how much they say this is it. There's no other. 50 years ago, you know, now everything from 50 years ago has almost been like disproven, you know.
Yeah.
And so this is what my idea of which I really want to get into is, I talk about it. I heard it from Tim Ferriss, and I heard it from my buddy Arlen, which is reality is negotiable.
Yeah.
Your reality that you live in can be is made up of your five senses, obviously, but can be manipulated through your filters, your beliefs, your habits, you know. So I really want to get your perspective, because for me, I tell a lot of my students, I'm like, hey, you're like this now. There's an alternate version of you that's like this.
Yeah.
Your goal is just to match the two and to
Yeah.
resonate more in this version than this version, because right now you're just here, you know,
Yeah.
creating loops. So I want to get your idea, especially that sort of delves into law of attraction, but law of kind of, you know, the law of attachment, all these laws kind of thing, but more the idea that your thoughts, words, and actions are creating your reality in front of you. So I want to really get your perspective, if you believe that, and if you have a sort of a different perspective on it too.
No, I'm with you, man. Confirmation bias is wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Like even you break up with somebody and all of a sudden you see their car everywhere.
Yeah.
You never even you've never seen they drove this car and now it's just everywhere. You're just taking double takes every time you're just driving. Oh, is that them? Was that them? Right? Your brain is really doing that, constantly looking for ways to confirm what it is you're looking for. 100%. And so then it's really powerful. Like, what are you actually inputting into the processor? What is it that you are putting in there? So then you start looking for those things. And that is kind of, you get into law of attraction and manifesting and all those things. Cause that's really what it's really, you know, you're just feeding your confirmation bias in a sense.
Yeah.
Right. So it's even as what, like there's a study that was about the effect music can have on you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you listen to a sad song and then you're showing a bunch of pictures of people, you pick out the sad faces.
Oh.
Right? And so that's what you're going to resonate more with.
Yeah.
And so depending even on what you are feeding, what you consume, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Right. You are what you consume. So what you choose to consume is what will create your reality, down to whatever type of music that you're listening to. So if you're listening to music that's always about fighting and gangbanging, every time you're going out, you're always like, man, you got one eye over your shoulder because man, like you never know, because that's what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And people look at you the wrong way, and you think you're a gangster because you just been listening to gangster music all day, right? Like, and it causes a lot of fights. And you'll even know, like, even at concerts, like if you go to depending on the type of concert you go to, the crowd might be a little bit more aggressive than a different type of crowd, literally just based on the type of music and the type of people that get brought in by that music, and how much of it is the type of people, or because the music that they're listening to is feeding into the lifestyle that they're choosing as well. Right. So I think that's a really powerful thing for people to really consider. Like, what are you consuming? What are you choosing to consume throughout your day on a daily basis? And can you write down some affirmations? Can you write down some things that will bring you closer to that other version of yourself? Choosing the right type of music, choosing the right type of content to watch, choosing the right type of habits in your day to align you closer to with what that Levi or that Sam would do. Right. So how do you bring yourself closer to that? And I think confirmation bias is a really powerful thing to use to your advantage. It's a tool or it's a weapon, depending on how you choose to use it, tool or a weapon.
Yeah. And that's where I think it comes full circle back into your integrity that you were saying.
Yeah.
What you want is like what you got to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of these things come full circle. And you're like, wow, okay, like as we said,
all connected.
yeah, exactly. I just
the crazy thing about it, man, is like it's almost like we create all of these complex problems all the time. It's like it comes down to ABC. So much is like we create all of these issues, we overcomplicate so much stuff, and we're talking about fitness and all, like for fitness, for example, we're talking about all these different ways, all these different things, and we don't even know how to eat, breathe, and sleep properly. A, B, C, the three things that you're basically like born with, more or less, for your body to be healthy. And we can't even get those three things right. But we're all concerned about, that the vein on our bicep. Like we don't even have ABC down.
Yeah.
But we're overcomplicating all these other things.
Right?
And I think that we'd actually end up being more healthy if we focused on those ABCs. And are we focusing on all these other problems and all these other things almost to kind of like avoid like getting into what actually will change our lives? I don't know, but maybe in some cases.
That's why I said the surface level versus the deepness. People want to play up here because it's easy, or they think it's easy. They think that surface level interaction, surface level materialistic things are what they want, but really deeper is where it's like the ball game is played.
Yeah,
that's why I always say, people talk about, you become unplugged and you're this and that. Now it's just going from the surface, just deeper. That's it.
Yeah.
On every action you do, every specific circumstance, every event that happens. And that's where, as you said before, you can get wound up by it all. You're like, oh, fuck, you know what I mean? But simplify it for yourself. One thing at a time. Just get one thing down pat. Okay, if you want to do integrity this week, start looking some role models, some mentors. Start looking for that, searching it.
Just do what you're going to say you're going to do.
Exactly.
You want to work on your integrity? Start, bro. You can't tell me you can have integrity if you can't even beat your own alarm clock. if you can't even make your own bed. So literally just giving yourself something to do, something that is within, like, maybe you can't commit to going to the gym 5 times this week. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe that's too heavy for you. You're not ready for that, and that's okay. Maybe your only thing is I'm going to commit. I'm going to write myself a contract. I, Levi Washington, hereby state that I will make my bed, even if there's a fire, right? And then you do it. And then you become somebody that you can trust, because that's what it is for a lot of people. You can't even trust you. You can't trust yourself to commit to things. You can't trust yourself to do really hardly anything. How can you trust other people if you can't even trust you? So how do you build your sense of self-trust? By making these small little commitments,
promises,
and progress yourself up to becoming somebody worth trusting. Super important.
And that's where confidence lies. Trusting in one's abilities. That's really the definition of it. That's fascinating. That it's trusting yourself above all other things.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? As you said, little 1%. Well, they're 1% things. They're not too strenuous. It's not 2 things, but it's the motivate, the momentum of doing them over and over and staying true to your word. It's amazing. Coming back to words. This one's been about words, bro. The 2 ones that I really, really want to get into because they've been pivotal in my life. So this one is about how men can level up their lives. We're talking socially, we're talking emotional intelligence, self-awareness from your perspective. So where do you see that men could really improve themselves and level their shit up dramatically by doing a couple of things?
I think, man, the first thing for me would be getting real with your inventory. Getting real with like the cards that you've got.
Okay.
We're all dealt a hand.
Yep.
Right. We might not have a stacked deck. We might not have aces in our sleeves. Right. And that is kind of one of the realities of life. Right. And so we can't control what is outside of our control. And that will steal our energy, that will steal anything that we try to do in our lives if we try to focus on that. So it's really taking it, what do I have to play? Maybe I'm not 6 feet tall. Maybe I'm not this, maybe I'm not that. But what can you be with what you have to the best of your unique individual ability? Because as long as you're focused on what you don't have, you will continue to not have. Once you start to focus on what you do have and how you can invest those things will grow. And I think that there's even like a story in the Bible about this where, there's 3 servants, and they each are given a certain amount of money, or they were called talents, unironically. But the first servant was given 2 talents, the second was given 4, and the third was given 6. And the 2 servants that had 4 and 6 invested their wealth and doubled it. And the third buried it for whatever reason. Maybe they were embarrassed because they weren't given as much, and they were really afraid. They were living in fear, etc. And at the end of the day, the master comes back and congratulates the two servants, and then gives the old backhand to the third one, right? And so I think that's what a lot of us do, is like, we're given these things, and our only job is to invest it, whether it's 2, whether it's 4, whether it's 6, whatever you've got, invest it. I mean, like, better is the person who's only got 2 and doubles theirs than the person who's got 4 and does nothing with it.
Yeah.
Right? You got to invest the cards you've been given. You've been given a body, you've been given time. Okay, how are you investing in those things? Right? And really focusing on, okay, so what are some little ways that I can move towards what I want to do? And so I always even ask myself and ask people, what are some things that you are like jealous of? What are some qualities that you wish you had?
Yeah.
And why don't you have that? Why aren't you working on that? What's a quality that you wish you had? And why don't you possess that? And what are some things that make you jealous? What are some things that make you feel like that competitive kind of envy? Because rather than looking at it with a negative lens, maybe that's saying that's something that you want more of, right? Maybe you're really jealous of somebody else's finances. Okay, rather than being like, oh, I don't have what they have, how do you work on yours then? Because that's really what you're asking, your mind is asking. It's like, you want that. You'd like to be more financially successful. Okay, so how do we work on that? Maybe you might not get that even in your life. Maybe you might not get to drive the Lambos, wear the Jordans, and have the other things that this person has, whether they worked for it or not. But what can you do in your life to just have more than what you have, and maybe pass down something more to your kids, to your offspring, or whatever maybe. But it's really like, that was a big eye opener for me. So what are the things that I found myself feeling kind of jealous of in other people, and some things that I kind of like, that was me, like, oh, I would like to be more like, I would like to have more of that in my life. And that's okay. Yeah. Okay. So how do I start to work on myself and invest the cards that I do have to move in that direction? And I'm going to feel better about that part of my life rather than just looking in envy at other people.
That's powerful. That is huge for people to understand that.
Yeah.
That's I think it's called I think it's epigenetics. I think it is. I could be wrong about that, but that's very principle. I'm only 5'7", right? So I'm a small fucker. but and it's funny because if you constantly replay that idea of you're small, I would have never developed the voice that I have, right?
Yeah.
So I always talk about, it's actually a blessing I'm 5'7", because I have a voice that I can be heard before I'm seen. Yeah. And one of the things is I can take over a room no matter what celebrity are even in there based on my voice, which I've only developed because I had to be heard before I could be seen, because I was short and everyone else was tall. Australians pretty. So because of this, the latter was true. And exactly what you're saying. That's fundamental,
Yeah.
And I would do things, like one of my, I do practices of singing, of humming in different harmonies, really to strengthen the voice, because I'm like, oh, well, this is one of the assets that I've had to because of the shortcoming, I've had to because of the shortcoming.
Yeah.
That's a little pun
Come
there.
on, man.
Yeah, it's good.
I
It's a
love
good pun.
that.
Yeah. So and I'm sure every single person has that thing that they can, as you said, that they can be like, okay, I had this shortcoming. What are some things I can concentrate on rather than the lack of? That's fucking, yeah, it's big. And that comes down to the second question, which is, it really ties into the abundance versus scarcity mind frame and mindset
Mm.
that I know you really talk a lot about, and it's pivotal in people. So I'd love to, and for anyone that doesn't know, the abundance versus scarcity mind frame. So abundance is, the idea of belief that there is an abundance of every sort of asset, every sort of thing that you want in this world. There is not a lack of, and scarcity is the idea that there is a lack of, there is a finite amount. And so I'd love for you to get into what sort of areas that you could see, even yourself, maybe you had that scarcity and you transformed into that abundant mindset.
Okay. Yeah. Um, if somebody is starving,
Mm.
they're not going to be concerned with what they're eating tomorrow,
Yep, that's true.
right? They're concerned with what they can get right now.
Mm.
And I think scarcity mindset is a major killer for a lot of guys out there, where, even the statistics can be stacked. Like, if you think about even the dating apps, where it's like the top 8% of men get like the majority of all the matches and all the, right? And so your average guy doesn't really have a lot of options, doesn't really get a lot of experiences
Mm.
in comparison to a very small percentage of hyper successful guys.
Mm.
And so that can be a really tough place to be. So, and I think a lot of guys struggle with getting extremely desperate
Mm.
once if they do even get a sniff of attention, if they get like, okay, and they just like,
I need it.
right? And they crush it and they suffocate it and they get clingy and they get controlling and they act like this is the only chance that they have in procreation.
Yeah.
Literally. And that is going to be super unattractive to women. When you get clingy, when you get desperate, when you treat them like that, like this is like, you are the compass of my entire life. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what scarcity mindset is, a very, very unattractive thing, but it's really difficult to get out of that when, especially for when we're speaking about relationships, if women are like your focus,
Mm.
they're kind of defining your masculinity, whether you're successful with them or not. And so do you really want, you got to take women off the pedestal in order to create a better sense of abundance mindset, right? Guys who have a lot of options and get to exercise them, they don't have the same problem with that. They can kind of hide behind it. They might actually still have women as like the compass of their life, but because they have so much abundance with it, it's not as apparent. They don't actually have to get desperate because they've always got somebody else on speed dial. So you won't really see it. It won't be as apparent with them. They won't get so desperate. They won't get so clingy in the same way. But really being able to like step back and focus more like on your purpose and who you're becoming, regardless of women, regardless of who comes on or off the path with you, is so important. They are your companion. You want a companion, not a compass. They can't be your compass. They can't be your mother.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have a direction for your life, because like, if you really want to invite somebody onto the direction with you, what are you going to say? Like, this is the direction I'm going. You want to come with me? Powerful. Invite her into the adventure, invite her into the path you're traveling. But if you don't really have one and you're just kind of like this, the only thing you're going to be able to find are women who are more lost than you.
Yep.
And then try to convince them that you know where you're going.
Yeah. So it's two people just not knowing where they're going, convincing each other that they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're all like really controlling, you're all these types of things, and you're trying to force them to think that you are who you say you are, and try to force them to think that you know where you're going, that you actually have direction, but it will all fall apart before long because you don't actually.
Mm.
And a lot of times it's like you have to keep them convinced, and keep them in a lack of direction. And I see that sometimes where, I'll see some people sabotaging the other person when they start to find some self-worth and they start to find some direction. Their partner's sabotaging them, because if they actually find some direction, they're gonna dip,
Yeah.
because they're gonna see that you don't actually have any.
Yeah.
So you got to keep them ignorant. You got to keep them low self-worth. You got to neg them. You got to make sure that they stay insecure, because as long as they stay insecure, they won't leave you. And so then there's a lot of these power dynamics, like who's in control, who actually has the upper hand in the relationship, rather than actually who has, rather than partnership, it's all about power. Right. And so that's what a lot of people operating in scarcity, there's so much, it's just about fear and power and who's eating today. People who are in abundance understand much more how to partner with somebody. Right. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but just off the top of my head, I think that's kind of what wanted to come out.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's a thing that they needed to hear. And it's really interesting that you go into that. A lot of people today, as you said, the abundance is the amount of say for a guy, the amount of available women they have at their choosing. And where you kind of tip that paradigm to where you don't focus on that metric, and you focus more on creating an ecosystem full of positive emotions, that then you can invite people. But the abundance comes from the actions that you're doing, not the options that you have.
Yeah.
And that's the big paradigm shift I see, especially that I came into, because I saw, with a lot of the pickup stuff back in the day, was I presented myself as this cool guy, but I didn't have the backing to it.
Yeah.
I was really good, so I'd connect with these people that may be a little bit higher than my if we turn the higher than my status, they're more higher, but it would be for a night, it'd be for a day. And I'm like, man, why can't I get that day too? It must be my line or my technique. It must be this, it must be that. When really the paradigm shift was, it's the ecosystem of bringing someone in,
Yeah.
I look like I've got the
100%.
abundance, but I don't.
Yeah. You're like a car salesman, bro. And you're selling cars with no engine.
Yeah.
Right. You can, if you can talk a good enough game,
Yeah.
you can sell the car, but that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's breaking down tomorrow.
Yes.
Because it didn't actually have an engine. It didn't actually have the guts. It wasn't actually going anywhere. So yeah, you got the sale and you could get rich off that. But man, is this really your business?
Yeah.
And how long is that going to last?
That was the funny thing. That's exactly correct what you're saying. I would even get the one girl that would come into the life and I'd be like, see, I told you it was that technique I needed to do.
Yeah.
And then I would kind of, my mind would go, cognitive bias. Oh, that was the technique. That was the thing that got them. Then they might dip. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll try it again because, they got the last one.
Yeah.
So I'm creating a fallacy where I think this is the problem, like your elbow's the problem, but really it's L4 is out of alignment. And you're like, oh, my elbow. Yeah. No, really, my elbow feels better if I put this strap on it. When they're like, that ain't it. This is the fucking problem,
Yeah.
And so that's what I found. That's where my abundance was lacking. I looked like I had abundance, as you said. I could sell the car. There's no fucking engine in it.
Right. And I see a lot of us kind of live there because, there's a lot of dopamine, there's a lot of validation, there's a lot of gratification, and the rest is going to take work.
Yes.
And that's tough. And it's tough to go into the mirror, and it's tough to do the work. It's tough to get the direction. It's tough to go into all that stuff. It's easier to, stay in the shallow end of the pool.
Yeah.
Vegas pool party, good times, bro.
Yeah.
But to actually go swim in the ocean, there's sharks there.
Yeah.
It requires strength. It requires the ability to swim. It's difficult. And there's a lot fewer people out there. I find the deeper you go, not as many people are willing to swim out there. It's a party in the shallow end.
Yeah.
But to swim out a little bit deeper, you'll find more fulfilling. It'll be more fulfilling. There's more adventure. There's a lot more strength that gets built. But there definitely is fewer people out there. Definitely fewer people out there.
I think the idea to know if something is fulfilling or not is to look back at it and how vividly you can remember it. Because the worst moments, I remember I was in Lithuania, my first time traveling with a group, and I was sleeping on a floor, like on just like clothes. And I
Yeah.
woke up in the morning with the dish, like I was on the kitchen floor. I woke up with the dishwasher lid on my face. And I remember that more vividly than half the parties I went to, basically because I was on my purpose. I was creating a mission for myself. I was living that
Yeah.
exhilarating life. And I'm sure you've
Yeah.
had moments like that. And you can remember even like the way that you woke up and hit your head, where you hit it. How can that moment that wasn't anything special, but it was because, as you said, yeah, it was more fulfilling, and that whole environment was more fulfilling than any Vegas pool party. Because I have been to the Vegas pool parties.
Yeah.
Hardly remember them.
Yeah. 100%, man. I definitely have, I resonate with that. A lot of the most powerful experiences in my life were really just when I found myself giving, like whether it was,
Mm,
you know, I got to spend some time in Mozambique, working in an orphanage there, and spend some time in Dominican Republic. So I've always loved like volunteering and really like trying to give more than I take
mhm.
in a sense. And those are the moments that have really like I've done some, been to countless parties, done all that kind of stuff, but I don't remember that quite as clearly. You're totally
Mm,
right by that, where it's like everything else is just like it's not there.
mm.
It's like it's just gone.
Yeah,
Right. I don't remember so many of those things, but I have a clear, vivid memory of the things that were actually meaningful to me.
yeah.
So true. Well said.
And meaningful is for everyone is different too. So
Yeah.
what might be meaningful for me, not you, not someone else. And so that's where everyone has their own individuality.
Yeah. That's
And
where I struggle, bro. That's something that I've been really working on myself is
Mhm.
understanding, creating space that everyone teach their own, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their own experiences, things that give them meaning, things that they want to live for, and
Mhm.
not being like on some sort of moral high horse,
Yeah. Yes,
right?
yes, 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 yes.
Because as much as like, we're going to come on here and talk about like what's more meaningful and what's deeper and what's this, but is that just us?
Yeah.
And that's what we find
A
meaningful.
subgenre. Yeah, of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And you're exactly correct. 100%. That's just our interpretation of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Of everything. So it comes back to even like, and this is what, one of the funny things about watching all of this stuff that's happened over the last 2 years, it's like everyone has their own filter that they've viewed everything from. A great analogy is if you've ever watched a car crash, if you've ever been close to a car crash and you've been really part of the investigation, you'll
Mhm.
notice that there's 12 different accounts from all 12 bystanders, each viewing
Yeah.
the situation from their own accord, right? So when
Yeah.
people are like, boxing's rigged, I'm like, I know it's rigged because a judge cannot, under no circumstances, I believe, cannot not be favoriting one fight or another. They've either
Yeah.
heard more about one fight or another. And so that internal bias where it's like, under no circumstances. And so I
Yeah.
always know
You
that
can't be completely unbiased.
you have to have something unless you're just a shell,
Yeah.
unless you want to be a shell, sit on the wall and do nothing. You got to stand for something, and you stand for something because you've been through experiences, so you know a bit of knowledge,
Yeah.
and so
So is
it
the
might not.
knowledge using you?
Oh, now that line's going to sit with you for a bit. This talk has been amazing, man, and I really want to get into the last two things, which I again, you can probably tell I'm very open about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Maybe that's good or bad, but one of the things that I've struggled with all my life, which was people pleasing mentalities. I've read every book, I've read everything, and it's still something that plagues me. And but it's good now because it's shown a light onto it where I've had to focus on it. So even
Mm.
though I say I'm not where I want to be, I'm a hell of a lot better than a lot of other people dealing with it because I've had to focus on it. But I want to get
Yeah.
your interpretation because as we were talking about before, where people come into a relationship with their own baggage and then they get frustrated and angry and then they lash out at the other person or they say some hurtful, meaningful things. A lot of the time you have the opposite spectrum where people don't say anything because they don't want that love to be removed. And I talk
Yeah.
about it where one of the ideas, especially in my teaching, is that people come into conversations with strangers, especially, and they're do a thing called seeking rapport tonality, which is,
Yep.
or seeking rapport body language, where they're trying to, I call it trying to get the like out of the person, trying to get the
Yeah.
love, like, please like me, please,
Yeah.
because if you like me, then I can validate to myself that what I'm doing is worth it, or what I'm doing is correct, or I feel more worthy as a person. So
Yeah.
as much as people pleasing, like, oh, they, you know, they do everything for someone, I don't want to talk about that area. I want to talk about how it intrinsically, how people are always kind of doing, because on one level you have to, you can't
Yeah.
not read a book by its cover, because we judge, because that's a primeval instinct that we have that keeps us alive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it does go to the extreme with a lot of people nowadays. They don't want to get fights, they don't want to cause drama, and they sort of have this avoidant sort of communication style, almost like, oh, I don't want to piss the other person off, you know.
Yes.
So I want to know what your perspective on that is.
Bro, I really wish I could give you the golden key for this, because this is a conversation I've had with myself many, many times. And
Mhm.
even boiled it down to, I'd almost opt for being around women more than men, just for something like this,
Okay.
right? Because for me to get rapport with women,
Yep.
a lot easier.
Yeah.
I just put on the charm,
Yeah.
you know, and I can, you know, say the right thing, smooth, light skin behavior, right?
Ooh.
But if you put that on, it's a lot easier for me to build rapport with women very, very easily, just by being a little bit more sexual,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
But with men, it's a dick measuring contest. That
Yeah.
requires a lot more energy,
Mhm.
right? And that requires a lot more. And so you'd like to gain rapport with men, that would actually be more taxing for me. So I'd often opt for, you know, when all the boys want to go out and do this, whatever, I'm just going to call a girl, because that's
Right.
going to validate my ego and make me feel better about myself with a lot less work. That is going to be the path of least resistance.
Mm.
And so we often opt for the path of least resistance. So I'm saying that because that's definitely, I've noticed that was a pattern for me for so many years of my life. And it's really interesting how that people pleasing sort of thing can kind of come in, and we're going to opt for some things and some behaviors that do give us acceptance and do give us rapport and do give us, like, so we can avoid rejection and we can avoid pain and we can avoid fear and all these
Mm.
types of things. So I think something that has helped in that regard for me
Mhm.
would be to, you know, it's a Jordan Peterson talks about this, like, you have to have teeth.
Mm.
You have to have teeth. You have to be capable of violence in order to be capable of mercy.
Yeah.
Because if you're incapable of violence, then you're not actually merciful, because you don't pose a threat at all,
Mm.
right? And so violence isn't just physical, though.
Mhm.
You know, we've been talking about this, like, even verbally,
Mm.
we are extremely dangerous. And
Mm.
I think the more dangerous that we understand that we are, the more responsibility we're going to take, right? We are dangerous verbally, we are dangerous physically. And the more dangerous you really realize that you are, that calls you to accountability. That should call you to responsibility for your words and for your actions, because you're dangerous, man. And I think you should be skilled with that. Like, if you got a dangerous weapon on you,
Mm.
you should be skilled with that. You should just be firing that off at whatever
Yeah.
direction, like,
Yeah.
you're triggered all the time, like an emotional basket case. No, you got to learn how to use that and use it well.
Mm.
And whether that's, and I think that has really helped me. I've gotten a lot better with how I use my words.
Mm.
And, you know, I started going to boxing classes. I started going to
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu classes, started learning how to, like, be more physically dangerous, because that translates over in a domino effect to the other areas of your life as well. And that actually helps you, I think, stand more for your boundaries. When you understand that you're capable, when I understand that these hands are capable,
Yep.
you know, I'm going to be able to stand by my boundaries more. Because if I really don't think that I am, and I need your acceptance in order to keep
Mm.
myself safe, then I'm not really going to stand for that kind of stuff. I'm going to
Yeah.
allow you to walk all over me, because that keeps me safe and accepted, right? So I think those have been kind of like the two biggest things for me that have allowed me to be able to hold my own better and hold my identity better, so I don't actually have to just morph and chameleon in order to stay safe and stay accepted by everybody, right?
Mm.
And so now I think I'm in a place where I'm really learning to allow myself to be misunderstood sometimes. That's a tough thing. That's a tough thing for
Wow.
me,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I can't, I've seen this more and more even with social media, because, you know, I've been growing a following and not everybody agrees with me. And that was really hard at first.
Mm.
Or when somebody might take what I'm saying and interpret it through their bias and through their lens and through their experiences. And it's
Yep.
not really what I was trying to say. And then I'll be going back and forth with them for like an hour trying to shove this is what I'm trying to say, swallow the pill, man. You're taking this wrong. Like, no, man, like you gotta sometimes you gotta allow yourself to be misunderstood. You gotta allow yourself to, like, you know, I'm not responsible for that. And
Mm.
understanding what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for, that's another big part of what boundaries are, because that's what a boundary really is. It's the line that separates what you're responsible for and what I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it's like. Once you start to understand more about that, that's going to really help you. I'm not responsible for if you accept me or not. I'm not
true.
responsible for your emotional reaction. I'm responsible for me. And I'm going to, you know, hone my skills to the best of my ability. And that's all I can really do.
I remember even when Will Smith came out and said, "I'm not responsible for Jada's happiness," how big of a reaction it was.
Yeah.
But you know, it seems to maybe they're a bad example at the moment, but you know, you know what I'm saying. You know, people coming at them. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's, you know, again, as I said, you have a way with words is able to kind of it hits the emotion directly, and I know the audience is definitely going to resonate with this one for sure, 100%, bro. But I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could sit here for another 2 hours, but I think I just got to have you back, and we got to go even deeper the next time. But the people listening that want to find your stuff, that want to connect with you, that want to reach out to you, where can they find you at?
They can find me on my TikTok and on Instagram. It's just Levi Washington. You know, I got my book now, Love Isn't, on Amazon as well. So there's a lot of different places. I even have a couple videos on YouTube. I'm not super active there, but I do have some like meditation videos that I want to get more into that as well, because that's really powerful. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Amazon, YouTube, just Levi Washington, wherever you
All the
go.
above. Well, all the links will be in the description, so everyone can click on that, as well as the Amazon book. I'm really excited to read that. Actually, I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to fucking just take a day, just read the whole thing, and just like tell you all about it. But I appreciate you coming on, man. No, this is probably the deepest episode that I've got, you know. So I'm very happy that I was able to get deep with someone that shares, you know, very similar beliefs, which is good.
Yeah.
You know, because then you can really go down. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's you know, for the number of years that I've been following you, it's amazing to be able to now connect with you. So I appreciate you coming on, brother. Thank you.
Pleasure has been mine, man. Pleasure has been mine.